Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. Today, we are presenting what graduates need to know to succeed, realigning higher education with today's workforce with Jake Hirsch-Allen, Dr. Misheck Mwaba, and Joey Ortiz Jr. My name is Lori Burris, and I'm the Education Innovation Advisor at LinkedIn Learning, the leading provider of learning online videos, and I'll be moderating this panel. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Don't worry, we'll be sending out an on-demand recording of this webinar as soon as it's available. Any presentation decks or additional materials will be sent to you as well. And if you have questions during the presentation, and I hope you do, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. You can always put comments in the chat if you can't find that Q&A box. We'll bring them up during the presentation, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. I encourage social sharing, so be free to put your comments and thoughts into chat. We'll be taking a look at it as we go through this webinar. And for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome, and know that we love hearing from you. Today's panel is such a great panel. It was put together and suggested to me by our own Jake Hirsch-Allen at LinkedIn Learning. But I'm going to start with our first panelist, Dr. Misheck Mwaba, who's told me it's perfectly okay to call him Misheck. Misheck, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your role at Bow Valley College, what you're doing around workforce development.
Thank you very much, Lori. It's great to be here. My name is Misheck Mwaba. I'm the president and CEO of Bow Valley College. Bow Valley College is a comprehensive community college in the province of Alberta in Canada. And we offer 2-year programs, 1-year certificates, also upgrading and immigrant training programs. As a college, our focus is really to prepare individuals to be ready for the workforce. And as part of that, we have looked at really how important it is to engage industry, to engage the community and fully understand what their desires are, what their needs are. And another thing I'm going to add is we've also looked at Bow Valley College is an access college, and we've started redefining access in a way that we also include those who are looking to upskill and reskill. Because as we go forward, things are changing very fast. Job roles are moving very fast. So we need those individuals to actually come to Bow Valley College, upskill and reskill. Back to you, Lori.
Yeah, and you're being kind of modest. You just put out a report for 2030 for Alberta. I mean, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so the province of Alberta started a project to streamline post-secondary institutions in Alberta and really also focus at what are the key things that higher education in Alberta should do to ensure that Alberta's got well-trained, very successful, able to contribute to the industry in Alberta. So it came with 5 key goals, and one of them is skills for jobs. Because at the end of the day, if we are going to power our economies, if we are going to diversify our economies, making sure that what higher education is doing aligns with what the needs of the industry and community are, that is really key. The other part there was also work integrated learning. And I hope we are going to have a chance to talk about that, because really with work integrated learning, it provides opportunity for the students to go and work on real world problems, but for the employers as well to test drive those students. Are they the future employers? Is there some gaps in what they're learning? And also for our professors, when those students come back, they actually bring new ideas that helps our instructors actually look at our content and say, what are the key things? What are the competences that these students need to go and thrive?
I think that's such an important part to think about, because the minute faculty get on a higher ed campus, they're not out in that real world experience mode anymore. And how can they keep up those skills? And how can they be present for students who are getting jobs 5 years from now? It's such an important thing, and it's often missed by higher ed. And now, Joey, over to you. Your organization is a mouthful to say, NYCETC. Did I get it right?
Yeah, you did. And we often get confused with, city government agency, but we are a 25-year-old association that is focused on ensuring that everyone in New York City has access to the skills training education needed to thrive in the city's economy, and really to ensure that everyone in New York City, particularly the businesses as well, has the talent that they require. You can see on the screen, but we're driven by very distinct core values as an organization. And just, I should also say that we're an association that is made up of 190 different training providers, employment service organizations, including educational institutions like CUNY and SUNY, labor unions, and employers. And we're the largest city-based workforce development association in the country. But our core values are really what drive us. It's about access and equity and market-driven talent development. When we say access and equity, we want to ensure that every New Yorker has access to a meaningful income. And it's not just about the training at first, it's about accessing that and having the ability to do so. And for many of the folks that we serve in New York City, who are coming from marginalized populations, that's difficult. Accessibility is a key factor. And the second piece is the market-driven talent development. How do we ensure that we're building stronger ties to the business community here in New York City that are largely not just the small businesses that make up a large percentage of New York City's business community. In fact, it makes up about 95% of New York City's businesses are SMEs, but the major corporations are huge employers that are national and global institutions. And so how do we ensure that we're working very closely with them and tailoring our programs and the work that we do here across the human services sector and the New York City system to meet their talent needs in the short, medium, and long term. That is, we'll get into the details of all of that, but how we do that is in a few very key ways. Our strategy is to convene, innovate, and advocate. We spend a tremendous amount of time with our members over the course of any given year. We host about 50 small, medium, and large convenings that are focused on people. So they're population-specific discussions to better understand what the services are that are being provided for them and what we need to continue to do there. And then we focus on industries. What are the current growth industries and sectors here in New York City? What are the ones that have been stagnant as a result of what has occurred over the last 20 months? And what has essentially been accelerated as a result of the last 20 months. And then finally, or not finally, sorry, what we learn from that, we then innovate. We spend some time working with partners like LinkedIn and our friend Jake over here to figure out what are some solutions that we can do a better job to ensure that we have a stronger, more effective and unified system here in the city. And then lastly, what we learn from all of that, we use to advocate on behalf of a stronger system here in New York City. And our advocacy is always focused on people first, but it's really about people, community, and systems. How do we ensure that those three things work closely together, are effective? How are we making sure that we're investing meaningfully in every single New Yorker who requires education and workforce development system to benefit themselves and their family? How are we investing in communities in an equitable way? So it's not just about economic development, it's about ensuring that the people that reside in those communities have access to employment opportunities and quality training so that they can continue to grow with that community as well. And then finally in that, how do you ensure that the system is operating effectively, that we're procuring dollars in a well thought manner, and that our organizations are spending them in a way that is going to benefit the community and the people.
I'm so glad you mentioned systems. Systems design is one of the biggest trends that we're seeing at higher education. And one of the roles that's coming out of that is what we call the CXO, or the Chief Experience Officer, really looking at the experience of every single member of that university system, whether it's an employee, whether it's a student, whether it's a faculty member, somebody in career services, and how do those systems all fit together to create viable experiences for what we all want at the end is student success, and part of student success is getting them to launch their goals in their personal and professional careers. The second thing, and you both have mentioned it, is the accessible and equitable aspects. It's never been more important. It's been brought to a head during the last 20 months of COVID as well. So Jake, last but not the least, if you could take some time to tell us about your role at LinkedIn and what you're doing in the area of workforce development.
I think in this crew, I would 100% describe myself as least and last, but I appreciate the kind words, Lori. And you've suggested that I maybe take a minute or two longer than the others, so I'll be least and longest. I decided to tell sort of my story in part as an introduction because Misheck and Joey and Lori have played such prominent roles in my life over the past 6 to 8 years as sort of role models for the kinds of individuals that I want to work for at each of the institutions that are speaking to you today. So Lori at LinkedIn, where I started working in higher education, Misheck later in my career working with higher education institutions on behalf of LinkedIn, and then Joey more recently working with workforce development organizations on behalf of LinkedIn, which is my current job. So I currently run workforce development for LinkedIn Talent Solutions across North America. My name is Jake Hirsch-Allen. I'm calling in from Whistler, British Columbia on a very rainy day up here, although I'm usually based in Toronto, or as Lori, Misheck, and Joey pointed out on our pre-call, on an airplane. But I cover North America for LinkedIn, and the transition from higher ed to workforce for me was really about focusing on those who need the help most, which is to say those who need access to skills and jobs. And that's the area where we at LinkedIn think we can contribute our technology, our labor market information, our data, and our learning content. And so to begin to tell this story, I founded a school about 10 years ago in Canada called Lighthouse Labs. And it was a boot camp, a software development boot camp to teach people how to code. And shortly thereafter, I realized that we were missing a pretty substantial chunk of the population. It cost $10,000 to go to our coding boot camp, and most people don't have either $10,000 or 2 months without work when they can devote to reskilling. And so relatively shortly thereafter, I joined LinkedIn. And shortly after joining LinkedIn, I spent a lot of my time working with higher education institutions on behalf of what was lynda.com, what is now LinkedIn Learning, trying to figure out how we could take institutions and really bring them into the 21st century in terms of digitizing their ability to deliver content online. And to be frank, most institutions were already well on their way when I began these conversations with them, Bow Valley being a fantastic example where they were already doing everything from skills-based hiring or skills-based learning and teaching to exploring micro-credentials to looking at how online content could complement their in-person offerings, building hybrid offerings, delivering services to a wide variety of exactly the folks that I've been trying to focus on: newcomers, people with disabilities, all sorts of folks with barriers to education, and then supporting them. And what we realized in terms of some of the public-private partnerships that I enabled with governments up in Canada, and now we've actually formed them right around the world, where governments would purchase access, for instance, to LinkedIn Learning on behalf of colleges and universities so that entire education systems could learn how to do what Bow Valley had done within one institution, but now at the scale of a province or state or even country. Columbia's vocational education system a couple of years ago formed a public-private partnership with us. And we think it dramatically improved how that country was able to sort of bear through the pandemic, in part because 500,000 individuals in their vocational schools were accessing LinkedIn Learning's online content via those vocational schools. And then those vocational schools were providing way beyond this, but among other things, the social determinant of educational and employment success for their students. And yet, throughout that process, we were missing, in my opinion, one fundamental population, and it is those who weren't able to make it into school, or those who were students but weren't necessarily getting enough support to get into the workforce. And that field, a field that, to be very transparent, I had never heard of 3-4 years ago, is called workforce development. And I think is really important for those of us who are relatively privileged to understand that this entire system exists, because if you're not unemployed, or even if you are unemployed and you have enough friends to get you a job, because 85% of people still get a job via their network, it's essential that there is this public service that helps folks get skills and get jobs. And that service is in New York focused in part on this one nonprofit that I came across that Joey runs called NYC ETC. And so it's in partnership with organizations like Joey's organization, workforce development boards, American job centers, the nonprofits and private companies that deliver their services, that I've spent the past couple of years figuring out, again, how LinkedIn's data, how LinkedIn's learning content, and how even our job matching software, can help those individuals who, for instance, are being served by Oregon's workforce development services or Washington State's workforce development boards, get the skills they need to get the jobs they need. And I'm excited today to be speaking with two of the folks at organizations that I think really are models for higher education in Misheck's case and workforce development in Joey's case, because they really have adapted to a world that's changing far faster than most post-secondaries and most workforce organizations, in a manner that again is a model for others.
So Jake's just reinforced what I know about workforce development. It's a complex area. It's locally driven. It works in terms of partnerships, and often to get to those people that are unemployed, underemployed, don't have the training, it's done through public university and college systems. So all of that's an important thing to know. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the problems and barriers that keep students from gaining the skills that the labor market rewards? Can you guys, any one of you can take that question on. What do you think some of the barriers are?
Sorry, I just noticed you go off mute, so I'll let you go first.
No, go for it, Jake. It's fine.
I mean, I think one of the greatest challenges in terms of student skills is, as somebody just put into the chat, affordability. So thank you, Sabrina, for adding that. And when you say affordability, I would have even broadened that to a word Laura used earlier called access. Whether it's not having the bus pass to be able to get to your community college, or having to take care of 3 kids and therefore not being able to attend the online course that you signed up for, or honestly, more straightforward affordability costs, like the tuition at the institution you want to go to is too high. The vast majority of folks who need access to skills, particularly in America these days, aren't getting them. And so I think that sort of access is a huge issue. And the last issue is being able to figure out what information is credible, which institutions are actually going to deliver an ROI. Or stays, it's a combination. Lori, you were going to say?
Good. No, you froze for a second on my end, but I think it went through. Misheck, Joey, some thoughts here on the barriers?
I can just pick up on that one. So I agree, affordability and in a broader sense, access. And to that, I would even add another challenge. I mean, we are in a space where if you look at content is everywhere. But to access that content, you need connectivity. And really, there's a large population that doesn't have access to that. So that's a challenge. So if we take out access, even the individuals who come to our institutions, to colleges and universities, I think there's also the other challenge that is associated with misalignment between what really the workforce is looking for and the knowledge that we're impacting and how to use that. That's a big challenge as well. So that's why, to your comment, Lori, it's extremely important to develop those partnerships so that we can understand what is it that's required. The other part is really the pace of change. The pace of change is such that individuals, by the time they graduate, some of the things that they learned in the first year are dated. So that becomes a challenge because when they go to the workplace, sometimes they're perceived as not competent enough. The other part I want to add is really, and I apologize to the accreditation bodies, but also the accreditation bodies, they have not kept up pace with the changes that are happening. And because of accreditation, then the higher education institutions actually end up using the standards that are odd, which sometimes are not relevant, they're not current in the workplace. So those are some of the things I would highlight.
Yeah,
Totally agree. Go ahead, Joey.
No, I was just going to, say that, I think everything that Jake and Dr. mentioned are incredibly accurate. I think that even before you get into a discussion around what's important around training, I think it's also important to recognize that even well before COVID, but I think COVID highlighted a number of these different areas that they both mentioned, that there's an intersectionality amongst so many things that are required for an individual to live and survive, let alone thrive, right? We're talking about, proper economic development in a community or a city, affordable housing, strong infrastructure, a strong K-12 and higher education system, whether or not you can actually access a job or even a training program if you don't have a good bus system or a train system close to you. There's lots of other issues that should be included in that. There's food security. There is just issues around the environment and how they impact you. And there's other social issues around social issues around racial and social justice. If you are someone who has not been valued in a particular community, and all these different things will ultimately impact someone's ability to be successful or make it that much more difficult for them to be successful if any of those pieces are fragile. And the more that they are, more fragile they are, and that's what you often see in particular communities, the more fragility that there is across these different areas, the more it is challenging for that individual to actually get to a place where they can potentially support their family and be successful. We studied and produced a report that was 2.5 years of work in partnership with two really incredible organizations here in New York City. And our report is called the New York City Inclusive Growth Blueprint. And that project was spearheaded by our organization, NYCTC, the Regional Plan Association, and the Association for Neighborhood Housing and Development, and anchored on this notion really around the intersectionality amongst all these different things. And then when we produce plans in order to create affordable, equitable cities, that we're starting with one issue or another issue and this very siloed approach. But it was really produced on the notion that economic workforce development and affordable housing drive this conversation, and that should be more properly informed by the other areas that I mentioned, including a number of other things that I won't go down the list of. But as it was highlighted in this report, but it was also already articulated here, we have broadband issues, we have infrastructure issues, we have issues around food security, we have people's inability to access strong education and training. When they get into the hiring pipeline, are they being treated respectfully and fairly in that process? Are there institutional biases that exist within the hiring practices of employers, whether explicit or implicit? So there's a lot of different factors here, and I think the challenge is really identifying the 1, 2, or 3 things that are going to make the highest level of impact. But I could say here in New York City, during the COVID crisis, we experienced huge issues with childcare for women and caregivers here in New York City who could not remain in the workforce and had to fall out of the workforce, or at least in-person workforce, for health reasons or health concerns with their family or childcare concerns in general. And that is a major barrier. Internet access and proper broadband in New York City. We had around 13% of our membership, which was 70,000 New Yorkers across our membership, did not have access to either broadband or quality infrastructure. So the combination of those two was actually multiplied even further. And so if we can't address some of these bigger issues, we're always going to have this intersectional issue that's going to impact the most marginalized communities in cities like New York City and across the nation.
And Joey, I want to jump in on that, because I think the knee-jerk reaction in parts of America is going to be intersectionality. There's politics involved. Like, this is a term that is overly politicized and sort of on the left. And if I can reframe it, what is clear from looking at the 4 panels on this call is I am the only one who hasn't faced any of the barriers you all just described. In Canada, there is a widespread she-cession. It was very clear that women were hit way harder than men during the pandemic and still are not back into the workforce at the same level. And part of what we're doing is rolling out national childcare to try to rectify some of those issues. If we looked at which groups in Canada, and I keep speaking about our country because I know it a bit better than yours, but there's one group that is the most discriminated against in Canada, and it is not Indigenous populations. They're usually number 2. But for instance, in Quebec, it is Black English-speaking Quebecers. And what you can see there is exactly what Joey just described, a combination of different issues where the vast majority of people who are hiring speak French, not English, are white, not Black, and are in a province in which those compound. And so the point simply being, let's call out those issues instead of hiding from them. Let's make them explicit, and then let's figure out how to address them. And there are ways, interestingly, that combine the different expertises that, for instance, folks on this call have to solve those problems better than we would be able to independently. One example is big private company, smaller community college, even smaller nonprofit working with hundreds of thousands of individuals. Well, the three organizations can likely work together to use our tech, the community colleges, faculty, staff, resources, all of the social supports they provide their students to get through, and the workforce development support of organizations like Joey's, because they're so connected to employers, right? Both LinkedIn and Joey's organization are connected on the employer side. So it really is, instead of, it could be intersectionality, it could just be collaboration and partnerships. But for another example is, if you look at TANF, or the support that's given to families in America, SNAP, the food support that is provided in America, that is often in many states tied to learning and tied to jobs, right? You have to either be trying to learn skills to get an education or to be applying for a job in order to get those social supports. And if we can make it easier, please, Lori.
I wanted to jump in on that one. I've done a lot of work on that issue in California. And one of the, what we saw is that single mothers with children wouldn't jump in to get those benefits for fear that social services would come along and take their children because they weren't able to take care of their kids or provide them education or provide them food. So some of this is understanding there's a trust issue, which I think Joey was pointing out, and it's not just an urban issue, it's also a rural issue in California, that when I witnessed it myself teaching online for the last 20 months, that my rural students had just as much disadvantage, because if they were at the campus of the University of Southern California, they had everything they needed at that campus, and they could invisibly look like they were equal, having an equitable thing. But the minute we put them off campus in different locations, all of a sudden that's not true. And we've had a system, a long time system, and you probably have had it in Canada, where the top schools had the top budgets and therefore they could get services like LinkedIn Learning. So this push to really not just put band-aids here and there, but to look at things in a much bigger picture, like the city of New York or the entire province of Alberta or the entire state of California, are essential to, if we're going to talk about it. And it's unfortunate that words like intersectionality become political, where people have to stand on both sides of the line. Because if you think about it, we have a system of mail where if I mail a letter to someone in a very rural part of Montana, I know it's going to get there in about 24 to 48 hours. That I do not know about three of the things that Joey mentioned. I do not know that about education. I do not know that about broadband access. And I do not know that the people that need to get jobs are even hearing some of the things that we're saying today. So this communication issue is super, super big in the United States and probably in Canada as well. I'm going to move on to the next question.
But before you do, I've got one more point to pull Misheck into this. And the reason I'm pulling him in is because he's dealing with something, Bow Valley College's institution is dealing with something in a place that I think the whole world is transitioning to, which is to say Alberta in Canada is our equivalent of Texas or Saudi Arabia. It's where the vast majority of oil and gas in our country comes from. And in fact, it's a huge part of our economy. And obviously there's a massive push to transition folks to greener forms of energy, to alternative aspects of that economy. And in doing so, for instance, if you look at Germany, the part of Germany that has transitioned out of coal mining is also by far the most extreme right part of Germany. They are the most disenfranchised with the government and the least connected to the rest of society. And the question is, how do we undertake some of these transitions? How do we both do workforce development and skilling through higher education institutions in a manner that brings those folks into the fold as opposed to alienating them? And I think that is particularly challenging when there are intersectional issues of class and race added on to some of the alienation happening just based on occupation.
And economic diversity. I mean, where you are on the ladder. Yeah, Misheck, tell us how are you bringing all those different groups together? with the new mindset.
Yeah, thanks, Rory. So before I go to that, I also just want to add one sentence on the barriers. There's also the part about, I think, Rory, you made a statement about big schools have got big budgets, but also that's where the privilege go because the entrance requirements are there to help those individuals. But we've got the system where if you don't get high grades, then it's very difficult to even access post-secondary. We've got a system where non-traditional way of learning is not acknowledged. So one of the things now, if I move to the question you have asked me, one of the things we've been doing at Bow Valley College, first, as we redeveloped our mission, one of the statements we came up with in our mission is really to make all learning count. And what we're saying is people have got different ways of learning. It could be through LinkedIn. It could be through work experience. The gap we saw was who is actually assessing and validating that the knowledge is able to be applied to the right problems. So we've kind of flipped the way we do things, and we've come up with an approach we call assessment first, because Jake was talking about the oil and gas industry in Alberta, especially in Calgary, where I live, and that's an industry that has really suffered, and a lot of people have lost their jobs. But even for the industry itself, it's reinventing itself, it's leveraging technology. But the question becomes, how do you quickly and cost effectively upskill and reskill? What we're doing at Bow Valley College is working with those organizations to really understand what are the competencies that you are looking for. And then we develop competence profiles. And those competence profiles are then used to develop assessments. So instead of somebody coming to Bow Valley College for 2 years or 1 year, what we're saying is, let's start with the assessment. After you've been assessed, maybe company X identified 5 key competencies. And from this assessment, guess what? You've got 3 that you can already use. We are going to give you micro-credentials for this. And because it's company X that helped us develop them, they can actually already employ you. In the meantime, you can find your way, or we've got a course here, or you can go to LinkedIn and actually address these gaps. And then you come back and we are going to do that assessment. We really believe that that's a way to move forward to make sure that people are upskilled and reskilled. And we really think the pace of change of how the job roles are happening, we really believe that that's a model that can actually work. And I want to tie that to something else. We've got a vision to shape the future of college education. And we really believe it's a broad vision, but we also believe that it's not one institution that can do it. We need the strategic partnerships. So we have gone out. I mean, part of my job is really to engage with other organizations and say, here's what we are thinking. How can you help us? For instance, we started working with LinkedIn some time back. We've got the LinkedIn learning that we use to embed in our courses. We are now moving to finding out how best can we acknowledge that in terms of micro-credentials. We are working with IBM. We became the first Canadian hub for IBM Skills Academy. Again, we did that because we really believed that IBM understands what their clients are saying. They understand where the gaps are. So if we work with them, then we are going to prepare our students in a way that they will find opportunities as they leave Bow Valley College. So really, those are some of the things we are doing. And I just want to end with the micro-credential part. We've really said a micro-credential should be able to help you achieve something. So we're not doing micro-credentials for the sake of micro-credentials. We are doing micro-credentials so that they can either help you get a job or you can stack it so that if 2 years later you come back, we are not going to ask you to repeat the things you already know, because that micro-credential is validation that you are able to, you acquired the knowledge and you know how to apply it.
I love that because, you know, if you think about it, most degrees, you have to wait 4 years to think you got it. But in your case, you're telling people and giving them the confidence to understand what skills they already have, what skills they need, and then also giving them the power to know how to address those skills. That gets me
Misheck, I gotta interrupt again, Lori, sorry.
I also wanted to go to Joey and talk to how you're seeing people address this issue of getting skills. Are you seeing new approaches in New York City and different ways of approaching that aren't the traditional higher ed route?
I think the New York City system is really unique in the sense that that the workforce system, unlike other cities, is highly dependent, and in other cities is highly dependent on the city college or community college system. Whereas in New York City's infrastructure is really built off of, one, the community college system, and two, also the human services sector at large. And that's where it's a little bit more dynamic and also a little bit more confusing. But it is important because I think given specific cuts in terms of funding that maybe community colleges or the CUNY system may have received in certain areas over time, the human services sector is able to really directly connect with people in a way that I think they have the cultural and community competencies to really support them in a way that I think larger institutions may not have had the ability to do so. And that's incredibly important in a city like New York City that is the most diverse place on the planet, that you have cultural institutions that are able to work in terms of language, in terms of just other competencies that are important, understanding what the family needs are, and then developing programs around that in order to meet those needs, in addition to obviously supporting the very specific and tailored specific needs of their clients that are the employers, right? And so that complexity is I think unique, but I think it is an innovation in itself. If you look at some of the most successful organizations in New York City, be that ones that are supporting the tech sector or financial services or the green economy or other areas that are growing, they offer some combination of virtual and in-person learning now, which is a new, I think, a new world for some of these organizations in the past, which physically required many of these individuals to be in person in order to learn, but are really adapting to the COVID economy where people want to be able to work from home and support their families from home and deal with childcare issues, but also learn from home simultaneously. We're seeing programs that are adapting and forming more comprehensive pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship models that are supporting their clients as well as employers. We're seeing organizations think about tech in a much more, I think, dynamic way, realizing that tech training should not just be about pathways to tech employment. It has to be about digital literacy. It has to be about understanding technology and understanding where these jobs are going in order to better understand what the future of work should look like for them. And really, teaching some of, I think, the issues that are often considered soft, but are really true professional skills, right? We need to teach lifelong learning. We need to make sure that people understand that their abilities and their skills will have to continually adapt over time. And that requires them to not just take on a job and to continue to shuffle around into those positions, but that they actually have to continue to adapt their skills to align to a changing economy, one that is going to change every so often, but more rapidly than it ever has before, as a result of, I think, what was essentially just accelerated by COVID. Instead of us having an additional 10 years of seeing some of these transitions take place, the economy required employers to adapt very rapidly and put some of these changes into place. I'm sure you're seeing that at LinkedIn, other large employers. That filters down throughout the system. It impacts the training. And so we need these organizations to catch up more rapidly. And I've seen here in our city, in addition to the CUNY system, which has had its struggles over the years, but some of the CUNY institutions are some of the most reputable institutions in the country. LaGuardia Community College is doing an incredible job in terms of training, particularly around the tech sector. We've seen incredible work from Manhattan Borough Community College in some of these areas as well. And as a result of those changes that are happening there, I think we're seeing a system here in New York City that is becoming more connected. We're seeing employers becoming more engaged in that process in order to support the development of these institutions, because they recognize that in order to achieve true diversity and really to build the type of talent pool that they're looking to do so in the future, they can't look towards the same traditional institutions in order for them to do so.
So glad you shouted out for the community colleges. They are really the workhorses of education in the United States for all kinds of difficult problems that need to be solved in education, and they have the flexibility and the adaptability to do it. You know, we're starting to get to near question and answer time. I do want to ask this one question before we go to Q&A. What do graduates need to know to succeed currently in the workplace? If you could each give your thoughts on that one.
Maybe I can start with that one. I think really the biggest one is how to solve problems. And if I just break that down, graduates really need to have that ability to understand and frame problems, think critically, work with others, and communicate well. The second one, I think, is what I call an attribute, and Joey mentioned that already: the ability to be lifelong learners. Take that initiative to find out where the gaps are. How do you quickly pivot to make sure that you get the skills that your employer is looking for?
I love it.
Well, that's which is great. I wanted to say one thing as a higher ed specialist here. Learning how to learn is totally teachable. Totally, anybody can do it. It has nothing to do with your cognitive abilities. So this is something we can absolutely share with our students and share with our faculty as well, and our employers, that's really doable, so certainly achievable.
And so instead of listing skills, what I think I'll do is describe work integrated learning. Misheck brought it up earlier: experiential learning or apprenticeships or work-based learning. And all of these give students the ability to learn the two kinds of skills that they need in a manner with other human beings, which is the key to learning all of the human, soft, fundamental 21st century skills. And the reason I say that is because we have this tendency, particularly those like LinkedIn who produce a lot of online learning content, to focus on technical skills. And technical skills are equally important. They're essential for almost every job, and you can learn them on your own and online. Human skills, you got to learn with other humans. And the best way to learn both of those is in the real world with a company or organization that might actually hire you. And if schools can mandate that every single faculty member in every single course ensures that every single student has at least some form of experiential learning, some form of real world experience with other students working on a real world project, I expect that they will both learn those human skills from the other students, from the faculty members, from the employer that they're working with, as well as the technical skills, how to use Excel to build a discounted cash flow analysis or how to code for a software company, that are necessary for a given job.
I totally agree. And I would add one word to that: collaboration. Too many schools say teams, but teams don't necessarily mean collaborative problem solving, getting back to what Misheck said. Joey, what about you? What are some of the things we could tell graduates?
I mean, I think some of these ideas that come up are right on. And I think experience is key to everything. I would, and I think with regards to that experience is really digging deep into, what it is that they want to do in terms of their lifetime goals. I think that we often find ourselves in a position where we are very much aligned to what our current experience has been, and that is from our tight family and friend networks, and that limits ourselves to specific areas that may not be where we're going to end up or remain for the course of our lifetime. And everyone will find themselves back in the job market searching for a place that is going to satisfy their professional needs and interests. And I think the way to curb that, or at the very least teach the ability to really adapt to that environment more aggressively over the course of their lifetime, is for them to have a broader understanding of what each of these different career pathways will allot them. If they are interested in the arts, we shouldn't shy away from that. But there are ways for them to continue to develop in that area and be able to adapt to a changing technological environment. It doesn't require you to be, if you want to be in cinema, you don't have to be an actor in order to be in cinema, right? There are other tools that they can learn over the course of their lifetime and be able to bring those pieces together. So I think we need to keep the ability for individuals to learn very broad within the educational system, but we need to be able to adapt and also support employers and people who are very clear on what their pathway looks like as well. And I think that is evolving and changing as a result of a very different economic situation that we've found ourselves in, but we need to allow for individuals to have a clearer understanding of what these different pathways will take them on in terms of their in their lifetime. And I think that requires exploration.
I so agree. I mean, before this panel, I did look up to see what our employers are saying some of the top 3 skills are, and the 3 were creativity, innovation, and resiliency. And you both have touched on creativity is to make things, to do things, and innovation means just simply to go into the new areas, not to be afraid to go into new challenging areas. It doesn't mean you have to invent something. It means you're willing to go out into that new area and see what the opportunities are. So Anna, I'm going to take it over to you now for Q&A and see if there's any questions from our attendees today.
Wonderful. I am not seeing any open questions at the moment. So I would encourage everybody.
I've got one if you want. Go ahead, yeah, definitely. So Abe, to your point, others in the audience, please do throw questions in the chat, use the Q&A feature, do whatever you need to do to get our attention and ask us a question. But I was curious, Misheck spoke about the challenges, how Bow Valley is addressing some of the challenges in economies, let's say transitioning to a clean or greener economy, a huge focus for LinkedIn right now. Our CEO met with John Kerry on this at UNGA, at the UN General Assembly, and is playing a prominent role at COP, talking about it from a sort of international climate change perspective. But at the same time, New York is facing a very different but similarly substantial challenge in getting its workforce back to work. I saw a remarkable article recently. I thought the whole world was going through sort of the great reshuffle or resignation that Laurie was describing, but supposedly Canada's not, interestingly, like just not, we're more conservative, not so many people are leaving their jobs. We're not willing to take a risk. But in New York in particular, there is a huge gap, a much, much higher gap in terms of employment than in the rest of the country. And that presents particular challenges for the populations you're trying to support, because this pandemic really hit, Blacks and underprivileged populations and folks with barriers far, far more than it hit those of us who have sort of white collar jobs. How are you helping New York recover or rebound?
Yeah, it's an incredible challenge. I think that there's a couple factors that are at play there. Obviously, as we've seen specific industries be more impacted than others, there is not a significant hurry for specific populations to come back into some of those jobs, unfortunately. I think the food and hospitality sector is an incredibly important sector for New York City. So much of the vibrance of our city is around the ability to go out and break bread and sit in these environments. And that is obviously something that was incredibly challenging over the last 20 months. The ability to do so was essentially shut down, right? And as a result of that, with the combined factors that we talked about before, which are a shut down school system or fragility around whether or not the school system was going to shut down at given times, childcare issues that are related to that. A large portion of the population essentially said, we're not in a hurry to get back into some of these positions if we can't support our family simultaneously. One, is this going to be going to provide the type of wage that we require during this time in order to support our family? And that, I think that's one major aspect. I think there's also a massive skills gap when it comes to some of the positions that have been or have grown over the last so many years, and have also been accelerated over the last couple of months. New York City is a global epicenter of businesses, and it attracts some of the most dynamic companies in the world. And with that, also attracts the best talent in the world and across the nation to come to the city. I think there is a question about the ROI on the city right now if you're not able to access all these incredible things. And so do I want to come to New York City right now? And the answer should be yes, but do I want to in the long term? But do I want to come to the city right now during the middle of a pandemic when I can't access all these incredible resources that have essentially been offered to us. And so that's slowing down, I think, the ability to attract talent from other areas. And there is an actual skills gap in terms of the talent that currently exists within the city in order to meet those talent needs. So as those companies have grown and have accelerated, and these positions have grown in these companies, we're not able to attract the talent that we require and simultaneously upskill the current talent that we have here in the city. So we do have a Herculean effort right now around recovery, whereas I think we have, as an organization, have historically been focused on what are the long-term systemic strategies that we need to address. We do need to do that, but there is a now recovery strategy that needs to occur in order to get people back to work, to incentivize them to understand that these positions, while short-term, we can also connect them to a longer-term systemic issue here in terms of addressing their long-term needs and making the economy more effective. And we need to really support businesses in their ability to mitigate these challenges right now. And that's not just large corporations, as has already been mentioned, but 98% of businesses here in New York City are small businesses that are 100 employees or less. We need to really support those businesses as much as possible, particularly in the restaurant and hospitality sector, in tourism, and areas that have been fragile as a result of COVID. But the city will rebound, and we will continue to be here as a resource and work collaboratively with the city in order to get us to that place. And we've already seen significant progress over the last few months, but we have a challenge ahead of us.
There's a bunch of amazing developments that I'm seeing in other parts of the country that I think could be adapted for the New York City context. As an example, Ivy Tech in Indiana has started giving credit to students for partial completions of their certificates or degrees. And so the students are actually getting, in essence, free education credit that then can be used either towards other degrees, or some employers are just looking at this partially completed marketing certificate and saying, you know what, you did enough to get in the door. Those are the skills we need. We don't actually need the full certificate or degree. We just need evidence that you have those skills. And this is sort of getting towards something that I am incredibly excited about, which is skills-based hiring, and how organizations can now stop just focusing on years of experience or degrees. I'm wondering if you think there's sort of opportunities in New York for more employers to engage with skills-based hiring, and how do organizations like you push them to do so? And Misheck, curious, the same in Alberta, like the oil and gas industries that are the core of its economy weren't known for sort of a dynamism in terms of HR practices, but I expect with the urgent need for transformation, that might be changing. I didn't set that up for who wants to go first.
No, you didn't.
Go, Misheck, go.
Okay, I can go. I think workforce development is extremely important, and Joy just raised something that's very important. The small businesses don't even have the budget to actually upskill and reskill people. So that's where those incentives become extremely important. But also the other part is, how do we get the population that receives so many barriers to actually quickly provide them with the skills they need so that they can go and start contributing with those small companies. So Jack, in Alberta, I know that the government is really focused on skills for jobs. They've been adding some incentives. But again, it's that looking at how do we make sure that the population, the indigenous, the new immigrants, the Blacks, who normally are not in the forefront, how do we make sure that we help with equipping them with the skills they need? We work with these small organizations, understand what they need, and quickly help them to start moving forward. Because if the credits are coming and it's not defined where they're going, again, we go back to a scenario where the large organizations who have got deep pockets are the ones actually who benefit, and we leave a lot of people behind. Workforce development is not only for economic development, but it also helps solve those societal challenges that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and I think to the question that you shared with me, Jake, I think there are incredible resources that are, and strategies and innovations that are occurring in different areas and different markets of the country and across the globe that should be applied to these communities. I think we should not, and we do not treat New York City as this particular, market that is only has specific challenges that can only be addressed here, right? Like every community largely has similar challenges, and then they're potentially magnified depending on the many issues that occur in a large city like New York City. But we welcome different strategies and innovations that are occurring and potentials for partnerships to address some of those challenges, because I think this is one of the greatest, particularly for most of our lifetimes, challenges that we will experience, and it will continue to lead to fragility in other areas. The economic engine that is our city and that is our country will ultimately determine whether or not people are satisfied with their lives and can contribute. And I think some of the political fragility that you mentioned earlier that we've seen in other areas of the world or other regions in other areas of the country are a direct result of people's inability to feel like they can be successful in their given market. So we have to address those intersectional pieces, but beyond that, we have to make sure that we are recognizing the skills that people currently have, because those skills are vast and can support businesses of a variety of different scales. So I think the example that you specifically mentioned is a good example. And I know that, in conversation with partners that we have in institutions like CUNY, they will need to look at some of these existing challenges because they saw a significant drop off in terms of success in certain areas for some of their students. And that is in part because of not just COVID, but also the changes as a result of COVID. There are significant people that see college as an in-person learning experience. If they can't access that, and it's primarily and only focused on a virtual experience, what is does that education is the value of that education change? Should the cost structure change as a result of that? All of these things, I think, are people, as their wallets are hurt during this particular time, have to address and look at those challenges and make those considerations. And we're seeing that, I think, in the city college system. We're seeing that in community college systems across the country and private institutions as well.
Completely. I mean, I think what's interesting is you're seeing changes happening in institutions that never would have changed before, in some cases at a pace that never would have happened before, and yet still not sufficiently for the pace of change in the market and sort of with tech more generally. The two areas that maybe I'll leave off on in terms of investment opportunities, let's say for governments or educational institutions, are career development. And I mean that in the human sense. Like, we need more funding for the people who do career coaching, career counseling, case management in the career development setting, because as much as we can produce the best tech and the best labor market information about what skills they need and what jobs they should be chasing, having a human being to walk them through that conversation, that exploration, is, I think, completely essential. And there are a variety of tech tools that we can then build their capacity, the capacity of the workforce system, of higher education systems, of career counselors, to use, for instance, an online work integrated learning tool like Ripen, combined with a LinkedIn Learning in order to create an online apprenticeship, or a future fit AI, so that you can figure out what jobs are actually ideal for an individual, or a LinkedIn Talent Insights to do the same. And so I think it's that human aspect and then building the human capacity to use tech that is going to accelerate the progress that you just described, Joey.
And Jay, can I just jump in for a quick second, just also to say,
Please.
I think we need to teach people what volunteerism and mentorship actually is and what can be achieved through that. I think one key thing there is that people have an association in their mind with what volunteerism is, that they're going to go clean up a park or work in a school and support a child. And those are incredibly valuable and important things. And there is a significant large portion of the population that wants to do that. But I think if we can, similarly in the way that we want to align skills to employment opportunities, align an individual's skills to mentorship opportunities, I think is really key as well, because it keeps them integrated and connected to the issue, because they feel like they can be successful in that. If somebody is a technologist, how do we ensure that they are spending their time developing the future technological technological generation? How do we ensure that the arts remain powerful and we bring in people in the arts to support individuals that want to do that and connect them to employment opportunities? So that in the same way that we talked about before around apprenticeship opportunities and experiential learning, I think that mentorship will provide that level of guidance, but we have to teach people the value of that mentorship and how to extract the skills that they have in order to support the next generation.
So we're getting to the hour, and I want to give you each one last chance, maybe a minute or less, to give us your last thoughts before we close out. I've been sharing what these illustrious panelists have available online for you to see and read and learn more about what they're doing. Misheck, let's start with you.
Thank you very much, Lori. This was a privilege for me to be part of this panel. I really appreciate that. This is a very important conversation. Workforce development is really something that needs to be approached by having different stakeholders. This is a huge endeavor to make sure that we provide assistance to society and to the economy. And it cannot be done without having strategic partnerships. It cannot be done without making sure that higher education, we collaborate with industry, higher education, we collaborate with the government, but also to Joy's point, we also make sure that we instill that sense of volunteerism. In fact, at Bow College, we've created a framework for work integrated learning, and really volunteering is also part of something we're encouraging our students to do. The last piece I want to leave with everybody is learning is done using various forms. Let's not be focused just about the traditional way of learning. Let's make sure that we identify and acknowledge the learning that's done outside the classroom, that's done in a non-traditional way. Let's assess that and let's create seamless pathways so that people don't have to repeat things they already know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joey, what about you?
Oh, I mean, first, just thank you for including me on this panel. It's always great to be with my friend Jake and to make new friends as well, doctor. So thank you for that. And I just want to just emphasize, I think, to the point that Jake mentioned before around the lack of knowledge around the workforce development sector. The workforce development sector is essential to the economy in this country, is essential to the economy's growth and recovery. And so, I would just, continue to ask, folks that are on the call and supporters or people who are interested in learning more about it is to become involved because this is not a political issue. The success of our nation on the economic front is highly dependent on our sector, delivering the services that we require to give to people and to the businesses that require talent. And so generate support in the sector is generating additional support in the sector is just really important. So we encourage, employers that are on this call to get connected with city colleges and community colleges in their community, to get connected with the human service organizations, to ensure that employers within their network are involved in the sector and can see this as a new tool for developing talent within their company, and at the same time, simultaneously supporting their community as well.
Thank you so much. And Jake, you get to close it out today.
Much appreciated. I've been trying to come up with sort of my, not 10 commandments, but 10 suggestions for workforce and higher ed.
Three.
And three. So I'll be really quick. One is that we know that education and workforce systems are calcified and they're relatively offline. And what we need to do is sort of break them open, make them more impactful, make them more hybrid. We know that brick and mortar education needs to move online, but not entirely, right? As Joey was saying, some people still want to be in person. Some people still need to be in person. And so it's got to be figure out how to do hybrid education. We know that the public sector has to work with the private sector. In fact, that even education and workforce development need to work more closely together. So let's figure out, take that idea of collaboration that we were supposed to be learning in kindergarten and apply it to us as, mid-career adults, trying to unravel how these systems have broken and put them back together in a more functional manner that, for instance, does digital, technical, and human in-person assessments, that does employer engagement through things like work integrated learning, that does skills-based hiring and is verticalizing, excuse me, things like employment pathways. And that starts to think about micro-credentials and badges as a means to build towards what we've always valued, university degrees and credentials. So maybe I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much all for coming together. And Lori, thanks for hosting us.
Well, thank you guys, all of you. And what you've really, really emphasized over and over again is that at the end of the day, people matter, and how we bring these people together to work to solve these problems is going to make a difference. Thanks again for joining us today. We hope to see you next time in the Higher Education Leaders event scheduled for January 13th. Joey is going to address some of the issues that you brought up. We're going to look at career exploration through the lens of equity, diversity, inclusion, and career services in higher ed, how to get students out into jobs, into careers, and into companies that promote diversity, inclusion, and belonging within their organization as a value proposition. If you want to see more or see recordings that we've done previously, you can always go to highereducationleaders.splashdot.com. And again, let's give a big hand to our panelists for their time, for their effort, and for all the work that they're doing right now and making a difference. Thank you so much.